Good morning, everyone. My name is Jacob Dye. Welcome to the Highly Caffeinated Therapy Podcast. Today is dedicated specifically to other professionals. If you're a client, you may find some of this interesting, but I'm gearing my episode today towards fellow professionals because we're entering into this new age where AI seems to be everywhere, and that includes things like ChatGPT, Grok, other AI modalities. You know, Apple has its AI now. AI showing up in the therapy space as well. And there's a lot of concern around that. And today I'm not necessarily going to get into the ethics. I'll hit on one particular ethical point that's, I think, the most crucial, but there's a lot of ethical questions around it as far as just who's running the apps and where does the data go. But we're not going to really look at that today. We're going to look at the three, from my experience, kind of the three most reputable and the three biggest, I guess I would say, most popular uh, AI scribe softwares. So, if you're a professional, you may be asking, Jacob, what's an AI scribe? So, we all know as professionals that documentation is the bane of all of our existences. Um, and this is particularly true if you're taking insurance, like I do. There's the ethical standard of our notes that we just have to have across the board, but that standard sometimes is kind of lower than maybe the degree of information that an insurance company wants us to provide in our notes. And if you're like me, to churn out a full note can take somewhere between, I mean, the absolute shortest, especially if you've seen the client for a while and you're just kind of in the work stage and you can copy from your last note and just make some changes. You're talking maybe 5 minutes. But in a lot of cases, we're talking minimum 10 minutes per note, if not, 15 to 20 or longer. If we're having to start from scratch or if we're having to update a treatment plan, there's a lot of time that goes into notes. And, as a client potentially that's watching this, you may be saying, well, why does that matter? It's like, well, if I, as a therapist, see on average, you know, 6 people a day and it takes on average 15 minutes for me to produce a note. We're talking 6 hours of time that I'm spending with you, the client, and then another minimum hour and a half spent simply just writing documentation around what occurred that day. And there are some days that I see 10 people. And so now we're talking, a significant portion of time. And so, other professionals, y'all can attest to this, you know, getting caught up on notes always, you get caught up and you feel good for a day and then the next day you're behind again. So the AI field, entering into our profession, particularly from a note taking standpoint, is pretty massive because it saves us a lot of time. Now, I'm gonna briefly touch on, like I said, some of the ethical concerns and best practice guidelines. This isn't a CE, so that's a whole other conversation. But I'm just going to hit on a couple points, and then I'm going to talk about our three kind of competitors and what I've seen. At the end, I'll tell you which one I use personally, and so none of these companies are paying me to talk about it. None of them know I'm talking about it, but I just want this to be out there so you kind of know what's available to you, what you need, what's going to work best for you. So, the major ethical consideration is, I guess, I'll say there's two. One is making sure that you have client consent to utilize the software, and that needs to be included in your intake paperwork. The second ethical thing is ensuring that you're using a HIPAA compliant software. Um, you cannot use ChatGPT or one of these kind of public domain open AI platforms to do your note. That's not ethical because there's not the appropriate guidelines haven't been set in place to keep it HIPAA compliant. But the three companies we're going to talk about today are kind of the three most prevalent, um, all three of which are HIPAA compliant, all three of which have been kind of tried and tested and work well. So, things to consider when using it: first, making sure you have client permission, and then second is just the actual use of the software. It is not best practice to just let the AI Scribe listen to the session. It generates the note, and then you just immediately copy and paste the note into your notes. You don't read over it. You don't look over it. You just copy and save and go on with your day. That is not ethical, in my opinion, and it's definitely not best practice. You should always be reviewing the notes for accuracy and ensuring that it is accurate in every facet. And likely there's going to be a couple changes or modifications that you need to make. But, we're talking about a maximum 5-minute process as opposed to a half-hour process. In a lot of cases, these are very, very accurate, but it's not you. It's not a human. It gets things wrong sometimes. And that's up to you, the professional, to kind of audit the note each time, make changes where necessary, and move on from there. So then let's look at our three competitors. First is Blueprint.ai. The second is a company called Freed, Freed. And third is a company called Scribe, or sorry, put Scribe, that is actually supposed to be Commure, Commure, Commure Scribe. Putting that in my notes so I don't mess up again. So I'm going to start with Blueprint AI because, to be fully transparent, that's where I started. The cost for Blueprint AI is probably one of its pros is that it's very scalable. So if you're really uncertain about how you want to use this, how much you want to use it, you're just getting your feet wet, Blueprint is a great place to start because the price point starts at $29 and per month, and that would cover 30 sessions. And we'll get into this in a minute, but one of the other, the top end of the price range is $297 a month for 300 sessions. So it kind of goes up in increments of like 20 to 30, I think, on average. And again, if you're starting out and this is something new, Blueprint's a great place to start because it's an easy point of entry from a cost standpoint. And if it's something you decide that you don't like and you're not going to use that much, it didn't cost you that much money as opposed to maybe some of these competitors. But if it's something that you're going to be using more often than not, and you're seeing, I'll just go ahead and get to the cons and then I'll hit the pros. If you're doing more, cons are if you're doing 80 or more sessions per month, so that's 20 or more sessions a week, Blueprint is not the most cost effective. Of the other competitors that I'm going to mention here give you unlimited, whereas Blueprint, you're paying for a certain number. And basically that amounts to about $1 per session is what you can expect. Then other cons to Blueprint, it can be a little glitchy at times. And that's, I think, kind of the case with a lot of these, but I tended to have a few more glitches with Blueprint than I did with anything else. phone calls auto pause your session, like your recording. Like if you don't put your phone on do not disturb, or you have a call ring through and you're using the app on your phone, um, that, if you're not paying attention, let's say you have your phone sitting on the charger behind you, you have the call come through. I mean, you're going to have to get up and go like pick up your phone, make sure that it's recording again. Otherwise, it could cut off 10 minutes into your session, and then you're not going to have an accurate note. It also requires you to open a new window in your web browser every time that you want to start your next session, particularly if you're starting a session while the note is generating, which takes 2 to 3 minutes. So if you're a person that has consistently 10-minute breaks between your sessions, it's not that big a deal. But if you're, going back to back, you're probably going to have to open another window in your web browser, leave the other window open. You can't close it out, because if you close it out, it'll basically delete your recording. And so it's just annoying, particularly again if you're using your phone. I would consistently log in and have 50 open windows in my web browser, and they were all Blueprint. So that's just a con. So what are some of the pros? Well, kind of like I mentioned earlier, it's scalable. If you have a small caseload or you're wanting to just get into this, it's a great cost-effective starting place at about $1 per session. It's very, very user-friendly. You can do some work in there to change templates and modify things. Like you can do that as well, but kind of just straight out of the box, metaphorically speaking, probably works the best and is the most user friendly from that standpoint. What's nice about it is it auto generates a treatment plan if you ask it to, which again, you should not be letting it do your treatment planning for you. You should be modifying the treatment plan. But if you just need kind of like a template or a place to start from, that's a really good use of the software, and it's included and it's already built in. We'll get to how that's different in some of the others in just a moment. It also provides you session summaries, both for you and for the client. And the one for the client is kind of written as if you were going to email it to the client or text it to the client, which I think that's just really cool. They also provide you discharge summaries for clients. Again, that's really useful, and that's just kind of automatically built in because, and this is a benefit in this one as well, is you basically create let's say you have a client, John Doe. It saves John Doe as a client, and then all of John Doe's sessions are kind of under his profile. And then that allows for that summary to take place. The other softwares don't allow for that. But that's a benefit. And final benefit of the three, at least from what I can find, Blueprint is the only one that provides you that Blueprint is the only one that provides you with a client agreement template that you can put into your paperwork, or you could just print off and send to them and have them sign. So that's just really nice because they went ahead and did some of that legal legwork for you. So that's really cool. But again, cons are if you're using the software frequently and you're doing more than 80 sessions in a month, you're going to get into some cost prohibitive situations. So then let's look at our second one. Our second one is Freed, Freed. The cost for this is $99 a month, or $90 a month if you're paying it annually. So $1,080 a month. Cons: has a limited degree of customization. You can do some customization, but just not a lot. the website and the app are kind of, they're fine. They're just a little, I guess I would say slightly clunky. They're just not, there's not a good user feel, I guess I would say. And if you do want to do customization, you have to have a degree of kind of knowledge around AI prompt, like writing AI prompts. Um, so those are some of the cons. Pros, very easy to use. You get unlimited notes at one price point. Of the three, this is the only one I had that phone calls wouldn't interrupt, like auto pause the session. If I had a call ring in and I declined it, it kept on recording, no problem. The other two, that's not the case. Other benefit with Freed is the app would also run in the background on your, if you're using your phone, the app would run in the background. So if I needed to pull up my calendar on my phone, or I needed to text a client a document or share a document via text or email using my phone, I could kind of minimize the Freed app. It would still record while I'm in another app and using it. Other benefits is Freed also immediately starts a new session. So if you are back to back and you're walking out and you forgot, let's say a lot of times it's just you forget to hit end. So you walk back in and your new client, your new session is starting, you hit end, you can immediately start a next session without having to open another window. You don't have to wait for the note to generate. It's already being uploaded to the system. You can go ahead and start, which is really nice. Um, and just simple. Like if you don't want much customization, if you're fine with just like the rudimentary templates that they provide, it's a good option. And again, $99 a month or $90 a month if you're paying it yearly. And our final is Commure Scribe, Commure. Cost for this is $88 a month. Cons, it does require a higher degree of AI prompting knowledge. Doesn't run in the background. Phone calls cause it to pause. And it requires a couple minutes between before you can start your next session. Another con that I didn't list here, but a con nonetheless, is when you know, one of the pros is you can customize and build your own templates. Apologies. And that's really nice, but the con to that is that I can find there's not a way to designate let's say your preferred created customized template. There's not a way to move it to the top of the selection queue. You can't really designate it as the default, let's say. One of the pre-built is going to always be the default. Now, that could just be a user problem on my end, but that's my experience. And that's not necessarily a major problem. It's just a mild inconvenience. And if I'm paying $88 a month for something, I want it to work and have no problems. And, it just be this perfect experience. Some of the pros, again, it's relatively easy to use. Again, unlimited notes at one price point. You have a wide variety of pre-built templates. And then for me, probably the biggest benefit in this platform is it allows you to customize. So you can build your own templates. You can either kind of copy some of what they've done and incorporate that, or you can start from scratch, which is really cool. So going back to Blueprint, it auto created a treatment plan. You can also in Commure write up a treatment, like a cut. You can customize a note and have it say, pull the treatment plan points from this intake, and you can modify that note. It auto generates it as the treatment plan. It gives you that basis, and then there's your framework to build off of. So that's nice. Um, you can also do summaries. There's ways that you can do that. But with both Freed and Commure, it doesn't create what I'll just call like a client profile. Every session you can choose to or not to put in the client's name or some initials, however you want to identify the client. Um, you have to put that in every time, and those do not link together. Whereas in Blueprint, you create the John Doe client, and then all of John Doe's sessions show up under John Doe's profile. So, which one do I recommend? If you are just starting and you're curious about using this software and incorporating it into what you do, I say start with Blueprint. Start with their base option. Try it out. See if you like it. See if it's something that your clients are comfortable with. Almost all of my clients are totally comfortable with it. But, just try it out. And that's a pretty easy entry point of $30 for 30 sessions. If you decide that you like it and you're looking for probably the most bang for the buck, I would suggest Commure Scribe, which I said at the end of the video, I would tell you what I use. That is the one that I use now. I used a Blueprint exclusively for a little bit. I got to the point that I wanted to incorporate this with the majority of my clients. So then I looked at more cost-effective options. And then I tried Freed, simultaneously tried Commure. And for me, Commure was just a much easier experience. And then, especially once I committed to that and I got in and I started working out the kinks of creating some custom templates and using those, it's been pretty great. I didn't mention this, but all three of these, I believe, will also provide you a transcript for the session if wanted. Blueprint does its best to try and delineate kind of like speaker one and speaker two. And it's like 50-50. Like sometimes like halfway through a sentence where you're talking, it says that the client is talking and it's still your words. And that gets a little clunky. But, if that was something that you needed, I think their base for that is a little better. Freed, honestly, I just don't remember because I never really looked at the transcript in Freed. But with Commure, it gives a fairly accurate verbatim accounting of what was said, but it's just this long, continuous run-on paragraph. So if for some reason that was something you needed, maybe you're a student, or maybe you're wanting to use this as like a training, you would have to go in after the fact and like manually separate your words from the client's words. And that would just be cumbersome. But again, that's probably something that a lot of us just don't need. Only time I've ever referred back to that is if the client said something that I wanted to make sure that I just got the words exactly right because it was something maybe really insightful, something really powerful, something that I want to circle back to and hit on or incorporate into their homework or talk about in the next session. Having like the verbatim transcript, I can scroll through there and find it, and that's helpful. But also, I still have a pen and notepad in my lap, and I tend to, if I hear something significant, just kind of write that down so I can come back to it, and that's easier to come back to than trying to scroll through. So I hope this was helpful for you. I hope it was informative. Again, there's a lot of ethical considerations here. You have to talk to your client about using it. Maybe different states have different rules. I don't really know. Um, I just want this to be informational so you kind of know what is out there, that it's a resource available to you. And it's something that, it's not, I know it's a little scary at times, but it's really not that scary. It's really user friendly, makes your life a lot easier, and particularly having summaries, and in Commure, when I have my SOAP note at the very beginning of the SOAP note, the first piece that I have in there is a brief summary of the session. That's a prompt that I created because when I'm looking at the notes in my EHR, the notes condensed and I can only see the first few lines. So now I can quickly pull up my client, that morning or just before the session, and I can see that quick blurb of, okay, this is what we talked about. This was the homework I gave them. Okay, yeah, I remember. And that's super, super helpful. Just because makes me a better therapist, and clients have better sessions. Plus, if you're not, you know, at times in the past I've done concurrent documentation, so now I don't have to have my laptop sitting in my lap the entire time with me typing away and the client thinking like, what's he typing? And same thing, I'm not necessarily writing the whole time. So something for you to consider. Hope this was helpful. Again, none of these companies are paying me to talk about them. I'm giving you my personal, honest assessment of all of them. They all have their place and thing that would work best for you. So I could encourage you to try them out. A lot of, I think both Commure and Freed, actually I think all three of them offer free trials of varying sorts. I think Freed offers the best trial because they give you 7 days, unlimited notes during that time, so you can really put it through its paces. Um, but Commure, I think, is limited to the number of sessions. Maybe it's like 5, and I think Blueprint is similar. You're limited to a handful of sessions. So, encourage you to experiment. If you have questions, feel free to send them my way. My email is jacob@highlycaffeinatedtherapy.com. And I'd be more than happy to answer questions, or if it's something where you want to schedule a consultation where we can talk about that, more than happy to do that as well. You can see the rates for that on my website at highlycaffeinatedtherapy.com. So, hope this was informative. I hope all of you have a fantastic day. The days are getting a little longer, weather's getting a little warmer. So, I hope you all have a wonderful start to your spring, and we will see you again here really soon.